Hello and thank you to logging on to www.blacktvonline.com. Right now you're viewing a show called BrothaSpeak. I am your host. My name is Heber Brown, and we're joined by a few brothers here to talk about some very important issues going on in our community, in the nation, and the world. Before we get started with the discussion, I'm going to start by introducing, or having them to introduce themselves, the brothers that flank me on my left and right, starting on my left.
Tyrone Keys.
Ted Smith.
These brothers have been a part of the show for a long time, since the show has been up. They've been a part of the show, and we appreciate Tyrone and Ted for their unique perspectives. And also young brother Eric is here as well, one of the sharpest minds, young minds in Baltimore City, and most appropriate because for this first discussion, we're talking about urban education. For those of you who do not know, we're going to educate you now on what's happening here in Baltimore. There is an advocacy group called the Baltimore Algebra Project, the Baltimore branch of a movement started by Bob Moses. And this Baltimore branch, the Baltimore Algebra Project, is preparing to launch Freedom Fall. Freedom Fall is patterned after Freedom Summer of 1964. Where students from all over the nation converged on Mississippi to register African Americans to vote. Also, they started freedom schools in Mississippi to make up for the school system that was not providing adequate education to African Americans in Mississippi. Well, to those same ends, these students here in Baltimore are launching Freedom Fall because they're saying we're still not getting a quality education and we're still not receiving the funding necessary to be on par with other school systems. And so on Friday, October 13th, they'll be not taking over, but convening inside of their schools and starting freedom schools in their cafeterias and gyms to discuss different issues. And then on Saturday, October 14th, they're going to launch Freedom Fall and have a rally right there down, those of you watching from Baltimore, at North Avenue and Greenmount, right at the cemetery. And they're going to walk all the way to 7th Baptist Church at North and St. Paul. They're going to announce the Maryland Freedom Board of Education, in a sense to say, well, since those who are in power have not done what's necessary to provide us with the resources and funding to get an adequate and quality education, we're going to create our own Board of Education, assume places of authority, and demand that the governor and those aspiring to be governor put the money where their mouth is as far as supporting Baltimore City public school education. So with the brothers, I want to discuss and talk about this issue of urban education, particularly when it comes to African American children and students, because this is not a problem unique to Baltimore City. I think we're all agreed that if you go to many large urban metropolitan cities, you're going to see school systems that are in quandary and in quagmires over what to do with resources or funding and getting African American students to meet AYP and other, levels of education. So, being that Ted is a school teacher, I want to start with Ted and get his take on what would be solutions to this problem of urban education in America.
First, I just want to say I support the Algebra Project and what they're fighting for, and these issues and demanding that the government, the state government, live up to the state constitution and encourage people all over the nation to fight within their respective cities and states. But I think that being that the Algebra Project is a descendant of Bob Moses and the Civil Rights Movement and Freedom Summer, that they would do well to unite both the civil rights movement with the viewpoint of Malcolm X. I believe that that was left out in the past, and I would urge them to follow both Malcolm and Martin unified within the present. And I believe that if they do that, we need to create an infrastructure ourselves to educate our children. We have right within churches, we have volunteers, we have educators. I believe that we need to recreate the African village. We need to educate our own children. We can make sure that there's a book that Edie Hirsch puts out, what every first grader should know, what every second grader should know, what every third grader should know. If you go, Roland Park learns that curriculum. It is completely on a different level from what is learned within the regular second-tier Baltimore City schools. Kids learn in the first and second grade what kids in 7th and 8th grade don't know in the second-tier education. I believe that we can create a village to educate children ourselves in the meantime while we launch this fight and help our kids to meet this level. If we really want to see our kids meet the level, or do we just want to feel empowered pointing the finger at the government or the white man or whatever? And I think that we need to do more to see it happen instead of just pointing the finger and playing blame games.
Tyrone, Ted, I hear an issue of control and curriculum, but these kids are talking about funding as well. They say in Judge Kaplan and have court cases where judges have put out opinions, and they say that they're owed $1.08 billion for the education. Is it a matter of just control and curriculum, or is funding? And if it is funding as well, how much does funding play a part in that, in your opinion?
Well, I think funding is definitely a necessity for any project these days. But I don't think that something like this should wait on the funding to materialize before they move forward with it, because the problem with all of the initiatives to improve schools and to improve education in general, they take such a long-term approach without really taking into account the fact that kids are matriculating through the system the whole time, and you're missing, in the case of Baltimore, thousands of children are matriculating out of the system and are not being properly educated. So I think that if you want to talk about funding, I think that to piggyback on what Ted said, maybe we need to take a closer look at funding it independently. Groups of people and neighborhoods coming together and making this happen. Parental involvement, businesses, actually seeing these students in Baltimore City as a future workforce and saying, hey, let's make an investment now so that we can, look at this as a pool of qualified employees later. But I think that the overall, thrust of the project, I agree with it 100%. I think that you'll see that there's more, and it's not based on whether you're conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican, but there's more of a serious look being taken at independently educating, independent of the structured school system, independently educating children. And I can tell you, my wife and I, when discussing how we're going to educate our children, homeschooling is leading by our nose with regard to private schooling. We want to take control of that education.
That's right.
And so I think this project is just an excellent beginning to try and do that and better educate our kids.
Mm-hmm. Eric, a couple months ago now, I think, Oprah came to town and caused quite a stir by talking about the Baltimore City public school educational system and really just saying it was such a horrible system that she even told Nelson Mandela about Baltimore City public schools and how terrible they were. The condition of the school system. As a student, and what grade are you in?
10.
You're in the 10th grade, a sophomore in high school. What are the conditions like, and what is your perspective on solutions for the school system?
First, I do agree with what the Algebra Project is doing. I mean, I think we should look for funding, but I mean, the school system, I mean, as far as being controlled, I mean, look who runs most of the people that's in the Baltimore City school system is black. Why is the mayor white? I mean, that doesn't add up together. How can he address the problems that we have? And then second of all, I think the funding should be more towards focusing on charter schools, so that therefore we educate ourselves and control our own curriculum, because the curriculum to me is like culturally biased. I mean, I don't believe in looking for funding to put more money into public schooling. It should go towards charter schools. And charter schooling, we always begging at the footstool or the white man for funding for us, like, he's such a big guy, but I think, we should take care of ourselves, educate ourselves instead of letting them educate us.
You talked about the curriculum a little bit, and your critique of the curriculum said it's biased. share a little bit more. How do you think the curriculum is biased?
Like, for instance, in my history class, most of what we study is Europe. The whole section is Europe. I mean, not to be rude, but I mean, it's kind of important, I guess, to know about world history. But I'm not trying to learn too much about Europe before I learn about my own roots. I mean, that's their roots. I'm trying to learn about my own. How can you teach a culture? Why black people learn about Europe, and half of them don't even know about Africa?
So where do you go to learn about Africa?
Library, research, Mr. Smith.
Okay, so you take it upon yourself,
right,
to educate yourself. Now there are some who would say, now if you're doing that, then why can't other students do the same thing? We got some students who are not doing well in the school system, or failing, and you know, if you're taking it upon yourself to take control of your education, why aren't other students doing it too?
Because I've been enlightened. You had someone who reached out to me. Most of these students don't have that opportunity or have anyone to enlighten them. I mean, most, like for instance, my time in enlightenment, I was taught by him. He teaches it a whole different way. I mean, he teaches the curriculum, but he teaches it from a different way, focused on Africa a little bit, change my perspective. Now, when you read and when you study in most schools, you get taught in the European format. The white man, they stick to the curriculum, precept upon precept upon precept. Therefore, you never learn in a way that you're supposed to learn it. You don't know why you learned it. You learning facts and dates, but you don't take time to analyze it. So at the end of the day, it becomes unimportant. So you say, why am I doing this? Why am I learning this? It's not important. This means nothing. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything for you the way they teach it.
Well, I think he hit on a couple of excellent points. For one thing, there's a boatload of hypocrisy, especially in the Baltimore City public school system. But like you said, when you explode it throughout the national scene, you've got other urban school systems where you've got the chief executive of the city, in this case Martin O'Malley, who goes on and on about how wonderful the school system is, but his kids are educated in private schools. The president of the city council, Sheila Dixon, her kids are educated in private schools. So there can't be too much faith in it, because if there were, then hey, why spend the money? Let me just send my kids here to this this institution or these groups of institutions that we oversee. So that's the one excellent point that you hit on. And then with the curriculum, I think that again in urban environments, in urban school systems, the curriculum is not such that it will interest a group of individuals, children, who have short attention spans to begin with. So if you're going to go and drone on and on and on about Plato and Socrates, which are important to learn about, but not, you know, connect the dots and say, okay, here's more on the history of, because when we, you know, were in school, black history pretty much focused around slavery. You know, you guys were slaves.
February,
right.
You're going to get all your slavery, and, black history stuff.
You know, we'll trot out very important luminaries in history, but they recycle Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, but they don't get into things like Shaka Zulu and the fact that he was someone who took on and defeated in several battles the greatest military empire that the world had ever seen. And that's important not just for us to know about, but for others to know about. And I think that once we as black people start to understand that, hey, we are perfectly capable of all of this greatness that they teach us, you know, everybody else is capable of, then hopefully we will start to see a change in our community. But just going back to the hypocrisy of it, I mean, you don't find your chief executives in these cities, you don't find their kids, and I love Kurt Schmoke, but his kids were educated in private school. I know his one son went to City, and City and Poly are exceptions along with Western, but for the most part, private school for these guys, you know, and throw the rest of us in there with the wolves.
And when you look at, I'm glad you brought it back up, the national scene, because we're really looking at losing a generation of students who have to grow up, who have to, if they make it out, make it away from the cell or the grave, they're going to grow up and do something in society. And I think that if we don't do something now, we've already, like you said, as we're talking, students are matriculating through this system and being graduated, socially promoted out of a system where they're not prepared with the tools and faculties to be responsible citizens of society, and more importantly, responsible Africans in the community.
And I know we're coming up on the end here, but on this topic, we definitely need to address the Baltimore City school system's recent decision to lower the standard. And what is it now, 60?
60%.
Okay, and I'm going to put him out there, I had a discussion with George Van Hook. George is on the city school board. George is a great guy, but George is dead wrong on this, and I told him so. George's argument was, hey, I've been in the classroom, I've taught, and if the child doesn't do this, that, or the other, then I'm still going to fail him, regardless of what the passing grade is. But here's the thing, and this is important to realize. They lowered the passing grade in the two most critical subjects for the 21st century, math and science. And you're not going, if a child has 10 questions on a test and he gets 6 of them right, because math is an exact science, George, I'm sorry, you can't fail them. 60, they get 6 right out of 10, they pass. And that does not, that does not arm our kids with what they need to go out here and compete against the Chinese, the Japanese, and so many others who take education more importantly than we do. So the Baltimore City school system got it dead wrong, and they're further handicapping our kids.
We got to wrap up. But just again, let me educate you, let you know, Freedom Fall is coming up. The Baltimore Algebra Project is about to launch Freedom Fall. October 13th, they're going to take over their schools. They're going to have freedom schools inside their gyms and cafeterias. There will be adults standing in the schools to protect these kids because they've received threats and consequences before for standing up for their education. But if you want to know more about Freedom Fall, please go to www.myspace.com/Freedom Fall Baltimore. myspace.com/Freedom Fall Baltimore. We certainly would ask your support for these students and to help them. This is just one angle of the fight. And as Ted said, when us adults, us people who know Malcolm and Martin up and down, get in the fight as well and come alongside these students, then we'll see a greater chance at really making a difference for education in our urban communities. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on BrothaSpeak, right here on blacktv online.com.